Hello there folks, this is me again, Ferengi on board. Welcome to my YouTube channel, a place where I discuss different topics about spirituality, psychology, psychiatry to a certain extent, game design, deep introspection and other such ideas that people may find some difficulty or may require some aid or just an additional point of view which I kind of excel at. If you haven't been watching things on my channel, I prefer being as neutral as possible, since I have a passion for not joining anyone's side, but just providing things as neutrally as possible, so that it serves as a informational point for others, not like something imposed on them. Also, I do remind people that they should listen to what I say and take those with a grain of salt, because my truths may not necessarily be the case for other people. Now, this video is in response to another question on Quora about INFJs, and since I am, according to the Meyer Briggs test and the information that I read on INFJs, I am at least 60% one, also with ENTP and INTP qualities. Now, the question was very simple, and what makes being an INFJ so difficult? Now, I don't possess too much information on INFJs as a whole and what it theoretically would mean, because I do have some sort of conceptual aversion. Okay, I'm not entirely attracted to science, because science has been becoming over the time more and more aggressive. It's as if it's forcing everyone to accept what it's saying, instead of just letting people pick on what they feel is most appropriate for them, because the truth will always vibrate differently to each person, because each person is here to experience their own truths. So regarding INFJs, I will most likely present this point of view, however, from my own, instead of generalizing on information that I don't possess about other INFJs. I have read several posts on them, and I have read the information that a very generous site offered after I have finished the Meyer Briggs personality test the second time and ended up as an INFJ. Now, the point about what makes being an INFJ so difficult, the question is a bit confusing to me, because it's like, what would it be as an INFJ that you find difficult? Because if life would be the answer, then life is not difficult, but the meaning that you give to life and to events in your life makes it so much more difficult, because you're not focusing on yourself, but instead you're focusing on things that have happened or didn't yet happen, and this is unfortunately taking a toll on you, because they are becoming just like some kind of weeds in your garden. What you have to understand is that your mind is like a garden. It doesn't matter what you plant in it, it just grows, because that's the rule of the garden. You put weeds into a garden, they grow. You put whatever plant into a garden, it grows, because let's not presume, the mind as its function, okay, it has all the conditions it needs for life to bloom within it. So all your thoughts that you go through, all your ideas, are nothing else than seeds, okay, and these seeds, well, they are just things that will sprout sooner or later. And considering how much people give importance and meaning to things nowadays, it's becoming more and more painful, because meaning in many situations simply moves you away from your authenticity. And the more you move from your authenticity, this is a lesson that most people, unfortunately, they don't learn, or they learn but they don't want yet to accept, is the more you move away from your authenticity, the more you suffer. It's not because I want to, but that's how rules are. The more you stray away from authenticity, you suffer. Now, to most people in lives, this is their life purpose, this is the life lesson that they have to understand, because as spiritual growth develops, okay, the point is spiritual wisdom is being acquired, and this is what helps people throughout their lives in different dimensions, in different aspects of the universe. And well, that is why some people seem, or are indeed, more gifted than others. Now, this is not something to look down upon. INFJs are looked at as somewhat the wiser, personality of the Meyer Briggs, and just because they are much more in tune with themselves, and ever since I was young, I knew I had this. I can't call it necessarily a talent, but it's more like let's call it a personal trait, that of seeing beyond what was initially given. Okay, I simply, ever since I was very young, I remember that I actually told myself, and I would keep telling myself, that I simply disregard concepts. I don't need to use them, and they're of little to no importance to me. Now, the answer that came here, I actually read it, and it's quite very well structured. And when I give answers on Quora, I prefer basing myself a bit on other people's answers, because I have a tendency to over deliver. I have created 2 other videos on INFJs on my channel. Feel free to watch them if you're interested. And well, in order to do that, you simply click my name on YouTube and you will be guided towards the videos that I have. You will see there a few videos of me playing Heroes of the Storm, a few videos of me designing different aspects of my game, and videos on spirituality as well, because I prefer adding multiple aspects to my account, just to keep it just to keep it active and to share some of the wisdom that I have acquired, even if I might sound too young for many people. Now, being an INFJ is not necessarily being wise. There is wisdom in all the personalities. However, INFJ's most peculiar aspect is that they always tend to be much more in tune with themselves, and this is usually a tendency. I'm not saying that all INFJs are necessarily in tune. Now, according to spiritual wisdom, in order to understand something, multiple lifetimes may be needed, and that may be dozens, that may be hundreds, and one may actually have to experience this in multiple timelines, and one may actually be an INFJ in different, different, let's call them actually times, okay, because let's say Wiccas, for example, in the medieval times, they were kind of INFJs, because this personality has a great tendency towards nature, towards animals, and towards people. And in the mind of an INFJ, just like I think, it's just that I have created throughout my lifetime, I have created some different self-programmings that, I kind of differentiated animals from humans. Now, the point about INFJ, usually somewhere deep down, they are very in tune with the idea that it doesn't matter what life actually manifests itself through, be it that it manifests itself through insects or plants or humans. They just feel a connection towards literally anything. And I even feel a connection with the objects around me, because I think that for a long time I've been considering that everything around me has life. And it was in the 11th grade when I actually met a colleague in the new class that I was moved, and this colleague actually told me, I never knew how the concept was called, okay, that idea of believing that everything around you is actually true, okay, and well, I didn't know there would be a concept, but especially back then I was far more aggressive when it came to concepts, because for some reason I never felt an urge to chain myself to such concepts. So back then, that colleague of mine was the first person to tell me in life that what I was believing in, or what I was actually manifesting, or well, whatever you want to call it, was called pantheism. Now, after reading a bit about pantheism, I felt that it was somewhat similar to me, but pantheism also includes the idea of gods and goddesses that represent objects, and that was not a specific of mine. I haven't felt the need for gods and goddesses, because those are just human imagination over certain things and phenomena that initially the mind could not comprehend. Okay, there was a quote that said, anything that is not comprehensible, or actually any technology that is not comprehensible to the mind, will easily not be distinguishable from magic, for example. So back then, to me, and even till now, gods and goddesses aren't kind of necessary, because they are just creation of humans. Of course, there are greater entities above, right, that have created this universe, or at least have lent a hand, let's call it like that, in the creation of this reality as we are, okay? But what if we are actually those gods and goddesses, okay? So I can actually go very deep within, but most people may not be ready to hear that. And if people don't feel ready to embrace a certain truth, it's not your job to deliver that to them. It's your job to probably wait for the greater time that would happen, or most likely they will learn that themselves, or from other people, or from other events. Simply sharing your truth is one thing, because you're not forcing it upon others. If you're forcing your truth upon others, that more likely makes you a tyrant. So to revert back to the idea of an INFJ, the point about being one is life is not difficult, but being so much more emotional and in tune with your emotions. The society that we live in simply does not teach anyone how to improve their mind and how to improve their emotions, okay, and how to better make use of their mental and emotional body. And this can end up as being a bit problematic, at least a bit, because the mind is just an engine of creation, as I call it, the engine of ingenuity, and the mind can only create. And also, being a garden, it's exactly the same thing. The garden creates based on what seeds it has acquired. So being an INFJ usually is the pathway towards becoming a bit more self-aware. Now they are more in tune towards this, and namely they will tend or used to tend a bit more towards this. I'm not saying that the other personality types don't have a wisdom, or would be inferior to the INFJ one, but the point is INFJ are simply more in tune with themselves. And the more you become in tune with yourself, you will realize that you can easily extend yourself over others, and then you have a simple situation, okay, like let's call it a choice, but it's not necessarily a choice. So the other people that you will meet are either people that have gone through similar things like you, or have not gone through similar things like you, but usually you will attract the same vibration. Since society is represented by a lot of negativity, and society is getting a bit sicker and sicker by the day, and well, we can agree that we live in sick times anyways, and everything that you see around is just plain proof of that. Now the point about that is INFJs simply crave, or tend to crave, a lot more free time. And in a world, for example, where there are so many people who crave attention, it can actually end up as not being too good, because you may end up actually drawing such people in your life, okay? Being a life that most people are simply programmed to embrace materialistic things, the INFJ usually let's call them the wiser souls, the older souls of this world, cannot simply tend to those, because they know that their body is just as temporary as those things, and those things eventually don't necessarily bring you much happiness, okay? INFJs tend to be so in tune with themselves, or well, tend, okay, not all of them are like this, but especially, like as I said, I'm gonna point out more about myself. I tend to be very in tune with myself, and I made once a realization, and I will underline this, it's a realization, that all people are the same, okay? This was done by me while I was manifesting one of my old passions, and that is actually map designing. I've had a passion ever since I was young to create maps, and one day while I was creating StarCraft maps, I just came to a realization, after I created several of them through the course of time until then. I came to the realization that all the people are the same. Now, it doesn't mean that they are all exactly the same, but whenever I created a map, okay, I realized that it's actually having the same components. It's just that they are differently spread, and of course in different quantities. but it's still the same elements. So I devised in time a way that I called the triangulation of resources, or the triangulation of aspects, through which, by knowing the aspects that I have, I could easily pinpoint them out of people. In time it proved a bit difficult, but as I developed, this thing became more and more subconscious. It became something that would be performed by me and I would just gain the results. And of course, typical to many INFJs, I would keep doubting myself. And I actually met people who would look at me and they would have that stare, who the fuck are you? And, they would ask that with, I actually met a few people, and one person specifically, he's still a good friend of mine, and the person actually said in the chat, when you meet that person who gets to know more about you than yourself, that's a bit scary. So I came to the realization that people are extremely easy to read. Now I know there is a huge community, let's say, of powers or whatever that lie within me, and simply analyze literally everything I encounter, from the way a person speaks, from the vibration of their voice, from the shakes of their voice, and the aura field that I perceive, and the emotions that I feel as a result of their their messages that I read on posts, or the message that they deliver through speech. There are numerous factors that are being taken into account, and it's like a database is being built within me, and I just get the answers. And when I present the answers, usually people come up with that face. And as this answer says, we feel things deeply and care about things many people wouldn't care about. So yes, this is something quite good. Ever since when I was very young, I was not necessarily accused, but I was labeled by my mother as a kleptomaniac. When I was young, I felt a very great sorrow for everything that would, in my mind at least, appear as abandoned. Okay, I would often pick up things from the ground whenever I felt they were abandoned, and I would just put them in my pocket, considering that there they would be a bit more taken care of, and I would actually end up bringing them home and collecting them in a box, which from time to time my mother would actually empty. And of course this carried on for a long time. Well, I grew up to a certain age where I actually stopped doing this, but I found out that this sorrow kind of belonged to most likely a previous life. Now, we're not gonna discuss this for now, but INFJs usually tend to care deeply, much deeply, about the people or different other aspects around them. Okay, usually they are, again, I underline this word, they are not hard to distinguish, because there are certain environments where you can actually pinpoint them. Like in crowded areas, usually you won't find them, or they are the ones who either rush to get out of there, or they are the ones who simply walk as if nothing can disturb them, as if nothing exists in there. And I would have a way of describing myself when I was much younger. I said, if I have a certain objective, I know that I have to go to it. Even if a comet or a meteor would crash in front of me, if I'm still functional, I will race to my feet and go around it and head to my objective, because as I said, I'm seeking to make sure that nothing ever disturbs me. So INFJs can be a wide variety of people, not just something that would be classified by some several rules that seem to have been bound in what the INFJ construct was created. Okay, most people will end up as believing this specific, and well, will probably believe that INFJs are just that, but in reality, wait a minute. Da! Păi eu mă duc la serviciu acum, măi. Păi la 6:30 la serviciu, sunt ore de noapte. Sunt ore de noapte, eu. E 6, în 20 de minute plec. Okay, so you'll have to excuse my grandmother. She always finds different ways of accusing me of things, and again, I simply bypass them. So as I was saying, yes, there is a great feeling and deepness within most INFJs. Now, it doesn't mean that you won't find some shallow INFJs, because the greatest point about life is to experience through emotions. However, there are so many distractions in this life, and ignoring things simply makes you turns you into an emotionally numbed person. Once you become emotionally numb, you're like almost dead, and that is very bad to INFJs because it kind of destroys them completely. The point of life is to experience and understand emotions, and if you ignore your emotions, well, emotions are the way your body tries to communicate with you. Okay, we absorb other people's emotions. The second point is a generalized point that I have been finding all around, and it's not typical specifically to INFJs. It is something that happens to most people, but it's just that usually INFJs tend to be the more perceptive of this. Now, if you stand around the wrong people, or you're working in an environment that you really don't like and there's a lot of negativity around you, you'll probably have a lot of those moments when you find out that, hey, like, why am I actually suddenly, out of a sudden, instantly angry when I shouldn't be, and, wait a bit. Ce figură să se repete, măi? Eu am fost afară 3 ore, măi. De unde să știu eu ce s-a mai întâmplat ție? Okay, so as I was saying, the idea of absorbing other people's emotions is not necessarily something that you want. Yes, it happens as a result, okay? And it happens as a result of being around people and having a very similar vibration. It happens because your auras overlap, and, well, it happens due to other several reasons, okay, that go probably beyond the logical mind, so let's not dive too much into that. I explain a bit in my other videos about INFJs, but let's actually focus on this topic. And the idea is, whatever you cultivate in your mind, usually there is something called confirmation bias. There's a special type of neurons in our brains that will focus the mind, will have the mind actually focus on exactly that what we are believing. So if you believe, for example, you've made a belief that you suck, for example, your mind will seek to confirm this bias, because in the end it's just a belief, and a belief is nothing else than accepting something without a need for proof. That is why you will see a lot of people that believe in whatever the news say, whatever other people say, and they never actually go back and say, hey, you know what, let me actually think a bit through this and see what are my feelings about this, okay? What could the point about this be? And it's like, since when is actually the government really interested in my security? Or since when has actually, like, let's say in the case of my mother, since when has actually my grandmother become so caring, and like, she doesn't love herself, so honestly she won't be loving others that much. Like, yes, I know I am living in a codependent relationship with her, and yes, I know the aspects of it, and I'm also somewhat complacent with this, but I am actually planning to move away because she's somewhat becoming a bit more abusive than usual, because, well, all throughout her life she's been like pampered in a way, like that's how she behaves. So people's history can actually be the truth that you seek about them, because the way they act in the present is basically because of the building blocks that they have built and other people as well built for them, and in the end they ended up as being the architects of their lives as usual. And just because she's been pampered, she kind of expects nowadays, and, well, it's kind of not gonna work with me, because I'm not interested in shallow things. I learned a deep lesson that I cannot simply help people that simply do not ask for my help. If they don't ask for my help, I cannot know what they want. Plus, she doesn't want to be treated, and, well, what else can I do? So now the point about this is that okay, let's get actually to 3, because I said a bit about absorbing other people's emotions. as I said, this is not specifically an INFJ specific idea, okay? But being more in tune with things and being more open, this happens, actually does not happen more to INFJs, is that they are a lot more aware of this situation actually happening. And ever since I was young, for example, I always called myself a black hole. And I knew for some reason I had this ability to gain other people's aspects and even certain traits that they had, and even if they were unique to them, I would like instantly replicate them, and I would have this aspect that I called passive learning, thanks to a game called Nodiatis that actually had that. And the point about this is, well, simply and non-technically said, you know when you shake hands, okay, you shake hands with your right hand, which is basically the representative of your subconscious mind. Whoever touches your wrist of the right hand, okay, now the point is that is actually a connection somewhat to the subconscious mind. That is why you may encounter a lot of tricksters, and even people who do mind control, they will usually touch you there, probably without you even realizing. In many situations they may not actually need to, but the reason why you are shaking hands is because when you do that with your right hand, you're actually sharing some information. Just like when the dog smells you, especially if they get to smell your sweat, when they get to do that, they actually read you just like they would read your identification card. It's actually much more than that, because reading the chemistry of your body, they actually get a glimpse of how well adjusted your chakras are, how well adjusted you are emotionally, and so on and so forth, okay? Just through a simple few sniffs, the dog easily gets to know several things about you, and that is why in some situations they may leave, or they might just stay around you. Wait a minute. Okay, it seems apparently my grandmother has asked for help, and there will be some people that will come by my house. I think I'll actually have to hurry this video a bit. Regarding the point 3, I'm not actually scared by scary situations. I'm actually drawn by them in a way, because I've always had, personally speaking, this passion to experience other people's emotions and sensations. Wait again. And for many times I actually felt that I really don't need to experience a certain situation, because I could actually feel it through other people and their emotions. I could easily be the watcher at the distance and absorb, or not necessarily absorb, okay, just experience the emotions that others would manifest, okay. What I can simply say about this is every thought that you come up with, it's just like a shockwave, an explosion that simply bursts from you outwards, and it simply impacts literally everything around you, all the objects, all the houses and buildings around you. And that is why when you go around different places, you might actually have weird thoughts popping up into your mind. It's because your vibration simply drew on those thoughts, okay. You can actually call this the pendulum effects. I actually found this under this name. Victor Odo actually had a video on this, and I also made one myself. And it's how your environment, and any environment, can actually influence you because of the energy that was stored in there. Because technically wherever you go, whatever you think, it's like you're actually sedimenting those thoughts as well in there, because you're bombarding the area with those thoughts that you're thinking of, be they anger, hatred, love, or whatever. It's the same thing with temples, for example, because you'll feel in a different way in a temple, because the thoughts that have been brought constantly in that temple are that of a certain nature, okay, and that's why you might actually feel a lot more elevated, or whatever way, shape, or form, okay. In my case, I can watch horror movies, but I kind of find them irrelevant in a way, because I know they are kind of fake, okay. Like, I tend to Nowadays I tend to break them down to the minutest things, and I break down the psychology, why there are those jump scares, how good they are. And yes, I can actually become very judgmental in a way, but don't forget that INFJs actually have J in their structure, okay, J from judgment. So yes, although I choose to be as neutral as possible, in the end subjectivity will always be a representative of all of us, because after all, what we express will always be our emotions and our experiences of this world, okay? And technically all these can only be put out in, well, let's say, as neutral as possible manner, okay, because we don't want those to be imposed on others, because most other people may not have experienced our things, okay? But you need to have some sort of subjectivity as well, because through that is how you actually connect to other people, okay? So all right, we tend to be perfectionists. Yes, this one actually I have to underline that it was a great aspect of mine. For a long time it's been more like a plague. Perfectionism can actually and is in a way a plague. I'm not calling it a disease of the mind or something, but it actually is, spiritually, psychologically and mentally speaking, it is a representation of lack of control over your life. And it's actually a way of overdoing things. And when people overdo something, it means that something is hurt, something is lacking, okay? Because they want to prove something, they want to show that something is true or not. They might have the opinion that they are good at something, but they kind of doubt themselves. So they simply cannot actually do anything else than try again and again to prove themselves that they are actually capable of doing that feat, that challenge, okay, even if they kind of doubt themselves. And to many it may be a problem because of confirmation bias. If you don't have a strong belief and you want to do something a bit more than you would initially do, and you also lack the perseverance or the patience, that's why most people actually break, because they want to do much more, which is not bad, but they don't have the necessary assets, okay, to do that. And I'm not saying about skills, because no one is necessarily born with skills. Skills, let's say you learn them in time, but in order to learn the skills you need perseverance, because like programming, copywriting, any skill that you come across, okay, be they more related to communication or not, or being social, okay, they have a certain ease of learning, but mastering them is actually that which requires a lot of patience. And unless you master something, well, it's not necessarily good to be a jack of all trades, like I've been for so long. I've always been the person who knew so many things, but I never got to actually master most of those. So now I'd rather become a game designer that also uses deep psychology, introspection and psychiatry when creating their own games, so that I create a vaster and greater aspect of immersion, which is kind of my greater aim, instead of just creating a simple game, okay? And every time I create something in my game, I always break it down and say, how can I actually improve this? This is not necessarily good enough. And like when for example I created a piece of work for the master degree, okay, the master degree final work, okay, the dissertation, I think it's called like that, for a colleague of mine who really asked for my help. I told her that okay, I will gladly help, because it was parallel translations over Mihai Eminescu's The Morning Star, okay? And The Morning Star and Mihai Eminescu are two aspects that I kind of love about my Romanian literature, and well, my Romanian literature, but I am a Romanian myself. And the point about that is that I really loved creating that. And initially I said, okay, I'm gonna take two parallel translations and I'm gonna compare them to the original, to the original poem itself. And eventually what I did was I ended up taking 5 parallel translations, and I wrote the first 21 pages of the work only by presenting verse by verse as much as I could about each and every verse of the first 7 strophes, okay, about everything that I could pick on, right? And I actually ended up with 21 pages, and I was like, okay, and I need to write a maximum of 60 pages, so I said, okay, I think we actually have a problem. And perfectionism can actually be a boon, but usually I see it as a plague if you let it rule you. Okay, how to make perfectionism something good is by using a trick that I have learned in time, and most likely I have naturally flowed towards it. It's called reverse engineering. Now, I know in many cases in my life, the direct approach kind of rarely worked for me, being the one who always required to, improvise rather than using something most other people use, and like, oh my god, this actually so works for me. And I was like, how the heck do those people actually make it work? And sooner or later I would end up doing my own thing. It happened even to my own game. And I ended up creating so many mechanics. When I compared myself to other RPG Maker games, I was like, dude, what the heck? It's like I created so much mechanic in the game and so many ideas, okay, that other people simply preferred not to add. But again, comparison is a thief of joy. So as I said, I always prefer over delivering, and well, that can actually be seen in some of my lengthier videos. So let's actually not extend this too much, okay? So INFJs find life difficult. As I said, finding life difficult is nothing else than a result of the meaning that you give to many things, okay? And yes, INFJs have their own lessons in life to learn, just like literally everyone else has their own similar lessons to learn. It's just that INFJs may tend to learn these lessons at a deeper level, okay? So usually the difference in between the INFJ and the other personalities is that INFJs would have a tendency to be much deeper than the others. It's not necessarily that the others would be, fake, or they would be shallow, but the point about them is that each and every one will be deep about their own ways, okay? Now, INFJs usually have these aspects, like I, which means introspective, introverted. Usually introverted people are introspective, but I'm not gonna generalize, okay? So through this aspect alone, combined with the feeling part, right, the F, and also somewhat the judgmental part, okay, that makes them people who will always sit back and who will mostly sit back and try to analyze things from greater prisms. They will tend to watch, just like I do, the greater picture, and they are the ones who are usually the rebels. They are not easily convinced. They can, in many situations, be starseeds, special people who come here to raise the vibration of the world. And they are people who have or tend to have a greater depth of analysis. Like, when people would come to me and they ask me a simple question, they usually are baffled by how many questions I answer them back, because answering something with other questions, okay, is a way to go for me, because I don't want to give people a free answer, okay? I can easily do that, but people may take that for granted, okay? I'm a deeper person. I want you to understand why so-called answers that you're seeking are actually inside of you, and you yourself actually have to understand them, because I can't help you. It's not because I wouldn't want to help you, it's just because I can't help you. You are yourself because of the environment you were born, your history that you have been through, and all the marvelous ideas that you've had, and all the awesome decisions that you took, okay? So that is your own existence, and knowing none of those, and even if I got to know some of those, I don't know you to a certain depth that I can say, okay, now knowing a bit about your core, I could actually guide you a bit, okay? In some people's cases it was very easy to do that and understand them, okay? But the point is, some people I know I will resonate with, and those people I like kind of almost instantly read, or well, not instantly, but very fast, okay? And I'd rather be now the mastermind behind and guide people in a way instead of just giving them free answers. Okay, like with these videos I just try to make some kind of guidance. Okay, I want to make people try to understand that becoming more introspective is much better than actually reading some answers and taking them for granted, because on the long term that's not going to help you much. You will reach certain points in which you will say, hey, but this is crap, like it's or it will have an effect until a certain point, and onwards it will feel like it no longer applies to you, because as I said, you have a different background and your experiences are most likely different from the people whose truths you have been following. Hopefully you like this type of video. I kind of have to go for now, so I'm gonna end this video prematurely. I have 2 other videos on INFJs, and if you are interested, post your questions on Quora or question me directly if you feel, write on my account or on my YouTube if you want, through some comments to my questions, and I will create sooner or later a video. It may take a while because I prefer being ready before providing an answer. I don't want to create something superficial, although in some situations I may goof up as well. I'm still human, and I'm not here to present myself as the best or the most introspective. I just prefer reminding people that there's always another choice, there's always another possible angle of seeing things, and that's most likely yours. Feel free to like and subscribe if you like the type of content I'm creating, and as usual, keep up the good work, become more introspective, and you will see in time that the answers you're looking for have always been waiting for you deep down inside. You are loved and appreciated. Take care of yourself, and well, just as usual, take care of yourself, of your loved ones, and well, enjoy life. Ferenc Board signing out.